Hello, everyone. I'd like to start things on time. Thank you all for joining. My name is Saoni Ramos, and I am the chair of the DSWSA Association. While I speak, I'll let other members and students join in. I'm excited to kick off this professional development series, which was an idea I had last year when I served as the chair-elect. The DSWSA's model is to learn, reflect, build, and serve connections that unite student, faculty, staff, and alumni. And what better way to do that than with learning and sharing our areas of expertise? I want to take a second to remind everyone that our next DSWA meeting will be held on Monday, April 7th at 7:30. So look out for your emails. All doctoral students are welcome to attend our meeting, and we aim to provide governance program and support to our DSW students. Before I introduce our amazing speaker, I want to remind you all that our next professional development will be held on April 8th, which is Tuesday at 6:30, and it's on expressive arts and supervision. Now, I'd like to direct your attention to today's presentation and speaker. Please note that today's presentation will be recorded. Jose Garcia-Cuellar is a bilingual licensed clinical social worker, supervisor, doctoral student, and captain in the Army National Guard. He is the owner of Own Your Happiness, which is a private practice for therapy, immigration evaluations, and coaching. Jose has been a public speaker for over 6 years and is the president of a nonprofit called National Military Empowerment Organization, which helps veterans and their families during the military to civilian transition once they leave service. Jose's main area of focus includes neuroscience to increase awareness and understanding on the veteran reintegration implications. Additionally, Jose is the author of The Guilt Intervention, a self help book that helps people heal from unhealthy guilt. Now, it is my great honor to introduce you to my classmate and friend, Captain Jose de Jesus Garcia Cuellar. Take it away, Captain.
Thank you, Saoni. I appreciate it. Y'all can hear me okay? Awesome. Great. Well, I am very excited to start, you know, this training that we'll be talking about how to help veterans transition. Now, there's going to be a lot of information, and some of it might be new. I'm going to try to avoid mentioning a lot of brain regions just to not overwhelm the content. Also, that's more for me than it is for y'all because I get easily sidetracked. So we'll get into it, and these are the things that we'll be talking about today. So first, we'll just briefly talk about veteran reintegration and some of their challenges. Now, before we can really understand hypervigilance and how it impacts the veterans, we have to really understand polyvagal theory and its three components of ventral, sympathetic, and dorsal, specifically the social engagement system. Then we'll also talk about neuroception and how it becomes faulty for veteran population. And then hypervigilance and its impacts of negative visualization and how we're going to put all of these things together at the end and hoping to put a bigger picture to all of this. And then finally, I'm going to offer y'all three tools that y'all can do or offer to the veterans to help them neutralize their hypervigilance. And we'll actually start with one of those before we dive into this. So this is called respiratory vagal ventral exercise. It's a breathing exercise, and it's just 1 minute. So I'm going to time us for 1 minute. And the goal here is to just try to lower, take as little breaths as possible. And it's really the exhalation that matters here. So where you are, I will time it for us. And I'll explain later why this actually is part of that work. So when you're ready, 3, 2, 1, and begin. All right. So you can keep that number to yourself for now. Now, the average person takes about 12 to 20 breaths per minute, and I'll explain later why this exercise helps the parasympathetic nervous system. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the first two slides because this is part of a bigger training, but I thought it was important to show my face in this PowerPoint. Just kidding. That's my team. Those are my counterparts. We are behavioral health officers, and we assess soldiers and officers just to their mental health and emotional wellness to make sure that they are ready for deployment. And then our NCO, non-commissioned officer, he works a lot of the logistical stuff. They're all really amazing guys, really good friends. So when somebody joins the military, they become a service member. Could be a soldier, could be an officer, and they go through this acculturation process where they learn new values, new beliefs, and it really is the military culture. It's its own has its own set of components. They also value camaraderie, conformity. They the mission comes first. So there is this idea of we're all working together for the mutual goal. Then you also develop a military identity. This can be part of your the skills that you learn. Rank as well becomes a part of your identity, and then the purpose, a sense of purpose of the job that you are given, and it really becomes more of a lifestyle. It's not just a job, it's something really deeply ingrained that becomes a part of who you are. And the reason why this is important, I wanted to paint a quick picture of these three components, is because these are the three things that when the service member discharges from the military, they they tend to lose these three components that can result in many other challenges. So the veteran reintegration is again the transition from the military to the civilian life, and it can be very difficult for many veterans. Neurobiologically speaking, we're looking at neuroception, which I'll explain more as well, hypervigilance, and then alexithymia. And the alexithymia is it's a it becomes difficult for the veteran to express certain emotions or even define them. They become more physical sensations than being able to really explain what emotion they're feeling. And this can become problematic because if you're not emotionally connected to yourself, then it can be very difficult to be emotionally connected to others. So as you'll see, as the transcription of this presentation, a lot of what we'll be talking about is how to promote connection. The whole concept of this is to facilitate and find new ways of helping the veteran transition or reintegrate into the community and their family members, but it has to start by connecting them to themselves. So relationship issues, again, it can lead to social isolation and then of course loneliness. Now, once we get to that point of loneliness, the next step of that, I mean, we're looking at severe depression, helplessness, hopelessness, and essentially veteran suicidality. And that's ultimately my goal of what I'm trying to prevent is that. Now, the Department of Defense estimates about 200,000 service members to be transitioning out of the military each year. That's a lot of people. So over the next 5 years, we're looking at 1 million veterans. And if these 1 million veterans aren't able to reintegrate, that is a lot of people that are going to be impacted. Not just them personally, but family, friends, community, etc. Also, if y'all have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll circle back to them. So the first concept here we're going to be talking about is polyvagal theory. I was really excited. This is a new concept for me that I just learned through this program. And it was developed by Porges in 1994, wanted to really understand the autonomic nervous system from a physiological and emotional state. So we have three components. We have ventral, social communication. This is where the social engagement system comes in. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Sympathetic. This is your mobilized fight or flight. And then dorsal, immobilized. So if you can see on the ladder, we have when we are in ventral. So most of us today, right now, are probably in this phase. If you are feeling safe, you're feeling calm, socially engaged, this is where you're at. Now, our ventral energy does get depleted throughout the day. Maybe certain triggers can put you in sympathetic, and the eventually, if you have a trigger that puts you in sympathetic that is not resolved, it can eventually put you in dorsal automatically. So you could go from ventral straight down to dorsal if it's something significant that you just haven't been able to move on from. And these three components are important because when a veteran is not able to be in the ventral space, then it becomes very difficult for them to connect because our social engagement system will shut down once you move down the ladder. So when we are in fight or flight mode, we are in essentially in this protective, altered state, trying to keep ourselves safe from whatever it is that's happening. And then in dorsal, we're completely shut down and collapse. There's just not a lot of energy. So it takes a lot of work to get you from the bottom of the ladder back up into ventral. So now, again, the social engagement system. This controls facial muscles, head tilting motion, your ability to express certain emotions, tonality as well, regulation of emotions, of behaviors, and then some physiological components as well. So if you've ever felt just completely apathetic or just not very engaged, or, maybe your social battery is just tapped out and there's just nothing, like your face just feels flat, chances are you're probably in dorsal. And at that point, I don't know about y'all, but when I'm in that space, I put on a hoodie. I don't want to talk to anyone. I'm like, nope, I am like in my space. And it takes a lot of energy to get you out of it. So we all go through it, again, it's part of our physiology. So it's important to recognize what that really looks like for yourself when how you interact when you're in ventral, how you interact when you're in sympathetic, and how you interact when you're in dorsal. More importantly, you also want to focus on what you need when you're in sympathetic as well as when you're in dorsal. Now, for many veterans, there, as I mentioned, that when there's unresolved triggers or conflict that can keep them in dorsal. So when you are in this shutdown space, the last thing you want to do is socialize, and it makes it very difficult to want to go out to the community. Even so, at home, it makes it very difficult. Maybe your kid wants to play, maybe your spouse wants to engage with you. But if you're completely shut down, you're not going to be able to connect in that space. And this doesn't just apply to veterans, it applies to all of us. So I would like to introduce to y'all the window of connection. I was really excited about this one because the window of connection is the social space or moment in time where two or more individuals' social engagement systems are active and in connection mode. What I'm trying to say here is when we have these ladders, you have the ventral, sympathetic, and dorsal. But when you are trying to socially connect with somebody else, then they have their own ladder as well. And if one individual is in ventral and the other one is in sympathetic, ventral is you're in connection mode. Sympathetic, you're in safety, protective mode. You're not, your social engagement, your physiology is literally preventing you from connecting with someone else because you are in a different headspace. And then when you're shut down again, it's just you're just so far apart from each other. So oftentimes, if you've ever come home and you're just so exhausted, and maybe your partner is like excited to see you and they want to talk and like do all these things, and you're just like, no, I just cannot handle this right now. Chances are you're not in the window of connection. So at that point, that can become very exhausting to the other individual because if I'm making bits of connection and I don't know that you're not in connection mode, I'm gonna burn out. I'm gonna become frustrated. I'm gonna get, frustrated that like I'm making an effort and those bits of connections are just not happening. And a lot of the times we just aren't aware that it's not personal. we're literally physically, we just are not able to connect. So it's a very important thing to note once you realize like, okay, I can see you're not in connection mode. Let's try getting you regulated or moving up the ladder. Then we can try connection mode. So this concept again, I was really excited to bring up here because the goal, a big part of this goal is to get the veteran up into ventral with their partners, with their community, and then connection mode. But what are some of the things that can prevent the veterans from getting to ventral? And we have neuroception. Now, neuroception is this subconscious internal surveillance system. It's completely automatic. We don't control it. It's our own internal surveillance systems that is constantly scanning for safety, danger, or life-threatening scenarios. And again, it just happens automatically. So it's constantly assessing our environment without our conscious effort. It just constantly is monitoring for cues of safety, danger. It also monitors our nervous system within another nervous system. So essentially, when you are interacting with another individual, it's also assessing for safety or danger. So if an individual is smiling and, you know, um, just engaged, chances are it's gonna come across as safe. If the if the individual is perhaps angry or frustrated or being very aggressive, that neuroception is going to put you in protective mode. And when it does that, it takes away from being in connection, and now you're in like this protective alert mode of like, okay, well, I need to be mindful of what's going to happen next. And that's the nervous system putting you in sympathetic. So when we look at polyvagal, we're looking at ventral, sympathetic, and dorsal, right? So even if you want it to be in ventral, as soon as there is an interaction or an environment that is deemed dangerous, it's immediately going to put you in that space. It also assesses for body sensation. So if you feel something in your body that just feels weird, it's immediately gonna like alert you and like, hey, check this out. That happens to me all the time. If I feel like a pain like on my chest or something, I'm like freaking out, like what's going on in my body? So that can also change how you are in that ladder. Now, the most important thing I really want y'all to understand about neuroception is it is calibrated through personal experiences and the environment. And this is significant because especially like if you were a kid that grew up in an environment where maybe your parents were very volatile, aggressive, or constantly like yelling, chances are your nervous system became very sensitive to that kind of environment. So as soon as something cues in your neuroception into, oh, this is related to this experience, it's immediately going to turn you into that protective mode and shut down your connection. It is biased for hostile and unstable environments as well. So even if you're traveling, perhaps you might be a little bit more on edge because it's unfamiliar. Now, because it is calibrated through personal experience, when we're looking at the veteran population, when a veteran or service member is deployed, they are now in an environment that is could potentially be unstable or even hostile if it's a combat um, area. And this is important because at that point, day-to-day things that may be perceived as low risk in our civilian life or world, in that environment, it has to be highly, highly monitored. So day after day, that becomes very fine-tuned and calibrated. So the nervous system becomes so sensitive to anything that could be suspicious. It could be a vehicle, it could be a kid, animal, a person, just anything because it's so high alert and because it is a survival mechanism. So that activates a lot of the sympathetic fight or flight mode, a lot a promotion to protective and a lot of disencouraging of connection mode. So we don't really get to practice a lot of that connection. Now, another thing that I didn't mention about the social engagement system is because it controls facial muscles, and I wanted to share this real quick before I forget, uh, associated with alexithymia as well. Now, when you're in protective mode, you're not engaging those facial expressions. Your social engagement system is shut off. This is a two-way process. Through certain trainings or even stigma, a lot of service members will tend to repress certain facial expressions, certain emotions. Now, there was a study that tested the facial feedback hypotheses, and they checked for, they had these individuals put a pencil in their mouth and amplified their facial expression, and then they saw a funny video, and then they assessed the intensity of the response. And then they had another group that put it on their lips and it suppressed their facial muscles and the same thing. So what they found is by magnifying or intensifying your facial expressions, your emotional intensity was higher, as well as the other one. When you're suppressing your facial expressions, you're also suppressing your ability to feel those emotions. So if the social engagement system controls facial muscles and it turns off your face your facial expression, then by turning off your facial expression, it could inadvertently turn off your social engagement system. So it's kind of it's creating apathy. So a lot of veterans will have restricted affect or blunted affect and challenges with that emotional accessibility. So part of what I'm working on is finding ways to reverse that process. If it is a two-way system, then by using facial feedback hypotheses, we can then kind of like jumpstart the social engagement system. That's another training, but I really wanted to share it because I was excited about it. Now, how this neuroception becomes faulty for veterans is this. As I mentioned, it becomes calibrated through personal experiences. So when the veteran is now highly calibrated, it's fine-tuned to danger, and then we put them in the civilian environment where now they have to go to the grocery store, maybe a sporting event, out to the park, etc. Well, that nervous system is going to continue functioning as it did in that other environment. It's not going to discriminate. It doesn't just change overnight. And this is where it becomes very problematic because now we are in a different environment where the risk is virtually minimal or low. But the neuroception, the nervous system, is still taking in cues of danger when there really probably aren't. And that can be very exhausting for the veteran because now you're constantly depleting your ventral energy. You're constantly reinforcing that nervous system to be active in that fight or flight mode. And in this environment, the neuroception was working phenomenal. I mean, it did exactly what it needed to do. But in this civilian environment, now it's faulty. So it has to be recalibrated to this new environment. But that takes time. And more importantly, there's a big, big challenge and a big barrier to that. And that is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is a symptom of trauma, PTSD. It's a heightened state of alertness. And it creates a lot of hyperarousal for the nervous system. So we're talking a lot about the nervous system. But again, it's important to recognize how constantly it is being active. It is being triggered and reinforced for connection, for protection, for safety. So we're not seeing a lot of nervous system promoted for connection. It's really just completely depleting all of that resource. So the ratio of your sympathetic nervous system being activated versus your parasympathetic, it's gonna be high, right? And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Now, hypervigilance itself, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It is, again, it is a survival mechanism. However, for For veterans, it becomes a survival mechanism that is almost necessary to go out in public because it promotes a sense of safety. However, while promoting the sense of safety, it's also reinforcing a false sense of fear. And that's the challenge. It's a vicious cycle, you know. So when the veteran goes out to the store, this is usually the process that I hear from all my veterans. Well, the first thing I'm looking for my exits. It's a common thing. You know, making sure you know where to go. Then there's some form of scanning, you know, of individuals. If anybody looks suspicious, you know, it's just going to key you in. And then we're going to create scenarios in our head. We're going to start visualizing, okay, well, if this person does that, what am I going to do? How am I going to respond? If I'm with my family, what am I going to do? So you're visualizing this scenario in your head. However, it's not a pleasant visualization. It's typically dangerous, catastrophic, because again, it is meant to be survival. What that does, though, it primes the nervous system to be activated to now put you in fight or flight. So another example of how we are disencouraging connection mode. And again, this is very exhausting, right? So what happens is the veterans prefer to then avoid these scenarios. So that's where the social isolation comes in. But the visualization piece is probably this slide is probably the one that I'm most excited about because this is where it all comes together. Now, mental imagery, there was a study that assessed the fMRI on the brain scan and found that negative mental imagery, risky behavior, or risk assessment heightened the activity in the insular cortex. Now, I know I wasn't going to talk about brain regions, but this one, it's important because it promotes the mental image processing. So when somebody is visualizing a negative or a dangerous scenario, it actually promotes vivid imagery more so than positive or neutral visualization. So if I were to ask you all to visualize yourselves at the beach right now, which I would love to be at right now, then you might have just a mild response. But if I ask you to visualize somebody breaking into your room right now, there's going to be a lot of activity happening. And that brain is going to completely redirect to this insular cortex, which is going to also promote a stronger emotional response, which is going to influence the decision-making process. It's all connected. So we're amplifying all of these components, and because it has such a strong neuro connection, and because again, it's a survival mechanism, it's going to create that sense of fear. But within the hypervigilance and the visualization, it's the scenario creating. It promotes that, well, how I'm going to deal with it, the decision making process. That's then going to create the sense of safety. So we're creating a problem that we're fixing in our own minds that doesn't exist. So it's really difficult to convince a veteran to not do that. I've done it for years. And I can tell you this, I can probably say about 100% of the time when I ask my veterans, "Oh, would you like to stop, doing this hypervigilance?" It's usually a hard no. At best, I've had a maybe, but their body's just so tense. It's just like, nope, nope, no, no. Very resistant, very hesitant because it's so embedded in the nervous system. Mentally, you might think like, okay, well, I don't want to do it, but physically, it's like, it doesn't feel safe, you know. So this visualization component is calibrating the neuroception for protection. So it's another component of how we're looking at the neuroception becoming faulty. We're reinforcing the faultiness or the overactive functioning of this neuroception. So we're looking at the hyperarousal as well, restricting connection that then promotes avoidance and social isolation, because who wants to feel that, right? And this is where everything kind of begins to collapse here. So I strongly believe that neutralizing hypervigilance is the key to promoting social connection, because by neutralizing this, we're going to recalibrate. And really, what I tell them is I don't I don't ever tell them, like, don't ever not do that. Like, don't, you can still be vigilant. It's the hyperactivity, the hypervigilance that we're trying to neutralize. And in order to do that, we want to neutralize the visualization piece, because that is what's neurologically connecting everything. It's amplifying the situation. So still be mindful, still be vigilant, look at your exits, neutralize the visualization piece. That's it. If we can start with that, we're in a really good place. Now, another way that I explain to them, well, what's the difference? Where do you find the line between vigilant and hypervigilance? And really what I tell them is when your nervous system kicks into fight or flight mode. Because I could be vigilant too, and I'm constantly looking and being mindful, but I'm regulated. I'm still calm because my neuroception is calibrated, right, to in this space. But for them, they have to recalibrate it to that point. And because it is calibrated through personal experiences, then by avoiding social interactions, we are not really promoting the space and the time to recalibrate it. So it becomes very difficult to change it if the veteran doesn't want to put themselves out there because they don't want to feel it. So, but I'm gonna show y'all how we can do this. Now, before we get into these techniques, I just wanted to kind of throw this quick ethical consideration thing. It's always important to build trust with your veterans as well. This is for our clinicians and individuals who work with veterans, particularly. So I can tell you how many times I've had veterans tell me that their therapist told them, you should just go out in public, do this, do that, without really solidifying the tools. More importantly, without really solidifying the safety within themselves. So we have to create safety, not just in the therapeutic relationship, but you want to promote safety within their bodies. You want to give them the tools that they can use to be able to regulate and not just, be exposed. Respect the veteran's autonomy. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. That's fine. Don't force it. Now, I always tell my veterans, I'm going to push you just once. After that, it's okay if you don't want to, but I have to at least try. So I also won't push my veterans to do something if I feel like they're not in that space yet, or if there's a lot of resistance. The more you push, the harder they're going to push back. So respect their autonomy. This can prevent re-traumatization, and just ask them. So I also tell them, well, if 10 is where you're at in hypervigilance, what would be a safe number for you? So again, the goal is to not ever make it a zero, because again, it is a survival mechanism that, I mean, most of us can really benefit from. We just don't want it to be overwhelming every single time. So what would a 1 look like? What would a 3 look like, etc.? So just some thoughts on that. Now, hacking the nervous system. Effective touch and co-regulation. Now, this is a component that I'm really excited about, and not every individual may have access to this if they don't have, a person with them. Um, and when I found the article about co-regulation, I shared this with my classmates. It A lot of it was, or that particular study was about parent infant. So I talked a lot about skin to skin contact And I was like, great. How do I get my veterans to do skin to skin contact? How are we gonna just hug this out? So, you know, you're gonna have to get creative with this one. But essentially, what they found is that effective touch is slow, gentle touch. So there's two types, right? We have the C tactile, which is the slow touch, as you can see, the slow nerve fibers. That's the slow one. That one activates the insular cortex, and we talked about that on the other slide, right? How the negative visualization activates the insular cortex, and which is a huge fear hub as well. But with effective touch, we're activating it in a more positive way. So it's going to help neutralize those those negative, visualizations, but it also promotes the release of oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone that helps feel connected to individuals, promotes social bonding. It also acts as a buffer for the HPA, which is your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal gland. I will tell y'all, I practiced that word all week just to make sure that I did not mess it up, and I did good on that one. So, but HPA, that's what it is. Essentially, thank you. So, essentially, the HPA, it's an endocrine system. It controls your adrenal gland, so it'll release adrenaline, cortisol, stress hormones. So, by having oxytocin prior to the stressful event, it actually promotes the reduction of that activity, which is really cool because, oh, and the fast nerve fibers, that's like rapid touch. Like if somebody pats you in the back or shakes you up, it's going to activate a whole different thing. But that's not really the point. I just wanted to mention it, why that was there. So it's the effective touch. So the slow touch, slow hugs that promote oxytocin can also reduce cortisol. Again, that's a stress hormone. It promotes positive social relationships, interconnectedness, and compassion. But it also stimulates the ventral vagal complex. So this is the first time we're looking, finally, bringing back the ventral state. Co-regulation and effective touch can promote some ventral activity. So now we're looking at, okay, let me move up the ladder. This is one way to start. They also found that a I think it was a mom that was gonna go to a stressful meeting or something. So prior to that, they let the partner hold her for a little bit. So when they tested her hormone levels and even the biomarker for the sympathetic nervous system, it was very different. It and she reported lower levels of stress and tension during it. So the reason I'm saying that is because one way that I've encouraged our veterans to go out in public, it's to begin by having some form of effective touch prior to going to that grocery store, prior to going to that um, sporting event or whatever, and even during if you can. So again, that's just gentle touching, hugs, gentle squeeze, hand on the back. All of that can really help reduce how much of that HPA activity happens, how much of the sympathetic becomes activated. So just by doing that, it can help reduce that component. So we're not just immediately jumping into the sympathetic fight or flight mode. It's going to have to fight itself to get to that point, which is what we want. So that can begin giving you just a little bit more space from being in this connection mode to jumping into the sympathetic protective mode just by the touch. One one thing that I thought was kind of funny in this article was um, individuals who have avoidant attachment will actually have the opposite effect. So do not force cuddle your partner, if they are not wanting to be force cuddled, because that can actually have the reverse effect. Not me though. Squeeze me all you want. I'm all for it. I love physical touch. So very important, very helpful, simple thing. But we want to intentionally be mindful about how we're using it in these public scenarios. Now, vagal dominance. Now, I talked earlier about the sympathetic parasympathetic ratio. And if I didn't explain this before, the parasympathetic nervous system essentially is what regulates the sympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic activates adrenal, gets you in this fight or flight mode. Parasympathetic is the one that's in charge to help you calm back down. Both are very important, very significant. However, some of us might have different ratio of the sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. And this is important. So this is called vagal dominance. Vagal dominance is when your ratio of your parasympathetic is essentially reversed. The activity of parasympathetic activity is more frequent than the sympathetic. So that can promote vagal dominance. It can also promote vagal tone. I'm not going to go too deep into that. But it also increases your HRV, which is your heart rate variability. And what that is the space between your heartbeats. So HRV promotes a high HRV promotes PTSD recovery because we're looking at the parasympathetic nervous system being active a lot more so than the sympathetic. So you're a lot more calm, you're a lot more regulated. So we want to have a high HRV. If you have a lot of activity in sympathetic, that will lower that HRV. You know, your body has to work so much harder to recover this way, and so you don't always get to have that recovery state. Now, the exercise that we did in the beginning about the breath is to promote vagal dominance because it is a respiratory vagus nerve stimulation. And it has to do with the exhalation. The longer the exhalation, the more it promotes that vagus nerve activity. Now, the study that I found stated that 6 breaths per minute can promote this high HRV in this vagus nerve stimulation. Now, I don't know how many breaths y'all were able to take. You are welcome to put it on the chat. I would love to see it. If not, that's totally okay. One of my friends, she did a minute and a half, or she did 1 breath and a half, and I'm like, that's impossible. There's no way. I had to try it. And then, now, mind you, the goal is not to hold your breath. That's, it's continuous breathing. So up until then, my mine was 2.5. So I had to try it, and then I was able to get to 1.5, but that's not the goal. The goal is just to bring it down to this, to this range. So I recommend between 4 and 8 breaths per minute to be able to get that full experience. Please don't pass out. Don't be a hero. Just be gentle with it. It will get better the more you practice it. Just 1 minute. So 1 minute a day, that's about, all you take. Now, I started doing this exercise with my clients, so I'm doing it a lot more frequent than that. And man, it really just feels great. So it is promoting a lot of that vagal nerve that can promote ventral activity as well. And really just the recovery of your nervous system. That's what we're looking at. So when our veteran is exhausted because they're constantly sympathetic, this is a good exercise to begin promoting that parasympathetic activity to help them just recover from it. And eventually promote that vagal dominance where the parasympathetic is active a lot more than the sympathetic. This exercise also inhibits the sympathetic nervous system and the HPA, as we talked about. So now we're looking at 2 buffers: co-regulation, effective touch, oxytocin, and vagus nerve activity that are both promoting the reduction of your sympathetic nervous system and your HPA. So that's significant. And then we have this hacking the brain. So we've already talked about the physical aspect, but we also want to talk about the mental aspect because, again, this visualization is happening up here. Well, it's also in your body, but you know what I mean. So The authentic statements, what I call it, is one's most important value. Now, there's a lot of great studies on positive affirmations and self-compassion statements. All of that is great, and there's a lot of benefits for self-confidence, self-esteem, can promote you know um, the reduction of stress as well. This one's pretty unique because uh, I started doing this one even before I was doing this veteran work. So then later, when I started working into this process, I found an article on neuroscience. So they did a brain scan and they wanted to test positive affirmations. And what they found is that in order for the brain to actually activate in the ventral striatum, that's the reward processing, so it can help promote dopamine, etc. It had to be one's most important value. So not just saying something you wish you could be, but something that you already feel that you are. So the process I do is just a quick question, and please join me in this one. You don't have to share it, but just for your own self. So when I ask you, what is what is one positive thing you believe about yourself? That's it. Now, that one positive thing you believe about yourself, from there I ask, well, does it feel 100% true? Or does it feel 100% positive? Sometimes it may not, sometimes it may. Um, and some people struggle with this one as well. There are ways to kind of get to it. And then I ask, does it feel authentic to you? Does it feel true to you? And then finally, I'll check in. Do you feel any physical activity or. So when you hit the authentic statement, typically people report some form of light and physical state in their bodies. Their core activates in a positive way. And that's how you know. Like when you notice that in your core, your brain activity is in the right spot. That's going to be the deterrent to this visualization piece. It's essentially can become a mantra, but it promotes that redirecting of brain activity, but also deterring from the visualization piece. So as soon as the veteran finds themselves creating this catastrophic scenario, that's what we want to implement. Okay, let me just go into my authentic statement. I am valuable. I am valuable. I am loved. I am kind. I am caring. Whatever it is, just repeat it a few times, and then that can promote the neutralization of that negative visualization. It can also reduce the sympathetic nervous system response. We're redirecting brain activity and promoting self-regulation and grounding. So this is really the final step to this hypervigilance component, and it's all when you put them all together, it really does work phenomenally. Um, so just to kind of recap a little bit, a lot of what I'm trying to do here is offer y'all a new way of looking at hypervigilance and how it impacts the veterans from reintegrating in the community, because they're discouraging the connection piece physiologically, neurologically, and emotionally speaking. So we're trying to find a new way to neutralize that, to offer more internal resources and more ventral energy so that they can be in ventral and get them closer to that window of connection. And if we can do that, not only are we allowing the veteran to then be able to feel safe going out in public, we are reducing the level of stress, potentially reducing their unhealthy coping mechanisms, and promoting connection, increasing quality of life. But ultimately, we are getting further and further away from veteran suicidality. And that's the goal. But I don't want you to hear from me. I actually have a very special guest with us today, that I want y'all to hear from. This is a Marine veteran and personal client of mine who was very excited and agreed to share his personal testimony to the work. So this is work that we have been doing, and I really want y'all to hear it from him. So, um, Russell, please feel free to unmute and share your thoughts.
Thank you, Captain. And can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was a corporal in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and I got out 25 years ago, last month on March 13th. And I floundered. I struggled with everything for a very long time. I drank. I used alcohol to quit, to kill the fight or flight, the physical reactions that I had to almost everything. Had some terrible relationships. Just it was quite the I guess nightmare, and that was in 2000 when I got out. Several years ago, I got to the point where I just didn't want to. I didn't care. I was so apathetic that I did not care. Well, it was so bad that I couldn't eat. I didn't care to eat. I didn't care to drink liquor anymore, which I drank half a bottle of liquor every day, and a big bottle. And I just felt like I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to see anybody. I just wanted to melt into the floor and disappear. I was never interested in hanging myself or shooting myself in the head. I thought I could tough it out somehow or another. But I just, maybe as a child, I was taught that that was like an unforgivable sin or something like that. But I just didn't care. I laid in bed for a month and I didn't shower. I didn't do anything. I drank and ate whatever I could just to keep myself from feeling even worse than I already did. Uh, but my body started shutting down, and my wife took me to the emergency room at the VA hospital up in Temple, and they told me that somebody in my exact same condition came in 24 hours before me, and they didn't make it. When I was in the hospital, they were giving me morphine to kill the pain, and I the chaplain came to ask me if he wanted to read me or wanted to bless me and pray. And at the time, I was on morphine, and I just thought he was going room to room and talking to everybody. But afterwards, I put two and two together, and I guess I was that close to dying and to death, and it didn't bother me one bit, not at all. Um, After that, I got out of the hospital and I quit drinking. I quit drinking for about a year, and it was at first it was okay, but towards the end of that year, it was everything was so terrifying to me. I was living in a state of constant hypervigilance, and it was horrible. At that point, I knew that I had to. There was just something way off in my brain, and I needed to get help for that. So I went to the mental health at the VA, and I told them that I was terrified. I told the Dr. April Goss is the individual I spoke to, and I told her that I just was terrified of the institution, authority, the military, the VA, all of that. I didn't want. I wanted somebody to from community care, a civilian from community care, and or somebody who wasn't connected with the VA. And at the time, Captain Garcia-Cuellar wasn't Captain Garcia-Cuellar. He was Jose Garcia-Cuellar. And I it took, I want to say, from the time that I reached out to the VA mental health to the first appointment was something in the realm of maybe 3.5 months or so. And from that point on, it took me a while to be able to trust him. And but I did every single thing that he asked me to do, and things just started getting better and better and better. And I believe it's been about 2 years now. I go in person on Tuesday every week, and then we do primarily virtual on Thursday every week. And the difference that that has made in my life overall, and just everything that he just finished saying, has been what the what he said was just dead on. I feel better. I sleep better. I'm not afraid to go to sleep anymore. I used to sleep fully dressed, ready to jump up and fight. I can take my clothes off and my boots off and sleep. Um, my nightmares have gone down. Uh, I don't want to make up a percentage and be wrong, but they're almost gone. In fact, a couple nights ago, I had a dream where people were chasing me, but instead of trying to kill me, they were my friends, and we ended up hanging out and having a great time, and that was phenomenal. This past Tuesday, I did that breathing exercise that you guys did right at the beginning of this presentation, and after that, I did it 3 minutes in the office. I went to a new Walmart close to Captain Cuellar's office, and I I was calm. I was so calm from that the lady, the receipt checker, when I was walking out, said, "Man, you are calm. You are so calm. Do not let anybody take away that calmness from you today." And I thought that was that I gotta tell Captain Cuellar here, which I did this morning at my virtual appointment, that that actually uh, literally just made it to where other people can notice. And so the breathing, I would like I'd like a copy of the slides because my eyes aren't that great, and I was gonna take
Yeah.
notes, but that is just so dead on accurate that um I one of the things that when we're getting out of the military, they have this transition assistance program service they call TAPS, or that's how it was when I was in. But at the time, uh, we're so traumatized that it's hard to learn or hard to pay attention.
Hmm.
They went through everything, and I can't remember one thing that they said. I didn't even know I could apply for benefits or that I was eligible for any kind of benefits until 2018. And that was whatever 18 years after I got out. And I've been homeless. I got stabbed. I got a pretty nasty scar right through my forehead that I think makes me look like I'm mad, or sometimes people think that I'm giving them a dirty look. And I was on that making the connections with people. If I've got people who think that I'm, like I want to make connections with people, and I have recently after the last couple of years I've gotten my relationships in general with my family, my friends, um, have just blossomed. And so every single thing that he just said is so right on the money for me anyway, that I am just honored to be that he asked me to come here and talk to you guys, because it's just completely life changing.
Thank you very much, Russ. I really appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable with
Yeah.
all of us here today. And and to add to the nightmares, because I remember you used to tell me that you had, I mean, you averaged about 3 to 5 nightmares per week.
Oh,
We,
yeah,
right?
to the point where I just did not want to sleep. I
Mm.
just didn't want to sleep. Because I didn't want to have those nightmares. I woke up. Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
And we
I
went
just woke
from,
up. I woke up. I don't know, a year and a half ago, puking into my pillow.
oh,
Because what literally right next to my wife, and I was like, uh, it was so horrible.
yeah.
And those are, I mean, I still have things here and there, but that stuff is amazing.
Yeah. Thanks
So
again, Russ. And we
yeah,
went from that frequency to about one nightmare
a
in like two
month,
months. Yeah.
yeah, a
I
month
mean,
or two,
it was an immediate, significant reduction.
huge, huge.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
so again, thank you again, Russ, for sharing your story. You know,
yes, sir. Thank
and
you.
appreciate it. Thank you. So, um, as he mentioned, a lot of these things are the same thing that we're looking at is it promoted sleep. You know, your sympathetic nervous is relaxed, right? So you're able to relax, you're able to sleep. We're neutralizing the visualization. We're disencouraging of nightmares. We are promoting more social connection. You know, he has shared that his marriage has also improved in the connection aspect. So there's a lot of great benefits, and I'm just really excited to continue to bring more to this work. This is just one component. There's a lot more things that I want to share in the future. So please stay connected. Y'all can see my contact information. Feel free to reach out. Please share any questions y'all have. You can shoot me an email directly. I'm happy to hang in here for a little bit longer if y'all have any questions or thoughts or any discussion points.
Jose, thank you so much for that amazing presentation, and Russ for sharing and being vulnerable. There are some comments in the chat for both of you. We really appreciate it. I'll also stay back in case anyone needs anything. Jose, mil gracias.
I made it. Guys, I'm gonna go play with some kids and a dog.
Take care, Russ. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Jose, someone's raising their hand.
Oh, yes, please ask away.
Melissa?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if to put it in the chat or not. So I'm just curious if the effect of like skin to skin contact, is that similar to the effect of like animals, like service animals, people that have PTSD and use service animals? Like, are there parallels there in terms of the
Yeah.
neuro?
Yeah, absolutely. Pets definitely can help promote oxytocin. Those you could probably force cuddle for sure.
And so is it different, or would like a service animal for somebody with PTSD serve the same function?
So, I mean, service animals typically do have a specific, you know, function, but in terms of the co-regulation component, it can promote the same effect. Now, the only difference that I would say is, a pet can't always hug you back, the same way or promote the gentle, effective touch. So it's the effective touch that really activates that insular cortex, but it can still promote oxytocin, which could buffer the stress activity. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I was thinking about like people who might not have much of a support network, like what their options might be.
Yeah, animals are definitely an option. Absolutely. But if you can't take, I mean, I guess that's why you have an emotional support animals that you can take with you in some places. It really does help with that cortisol regulation. It just won't be to the deeper extent of the effective touch, but it's still benefit.
Thank you.
Maria?
Hi, thank you. Excellent presentation. And I didn't get to say anything to Russ, but can you please express how transformative his narrative was? I was very much moved by it. I have a comment and then a question. One, in my work working with first responders and veterans, sometimes, as you mentioned, there is a lack of perhaps social connection and so forth who can provide that effective touch. So it's part of our plan of care. I tell my veterans and my first responders to go get massages. And that is one way that I try to offer that complement with those individuals who may not be connected, may not have family members, or are so isolated at that point that they can't even extend or accept the touch. So sometimes the massage offers a layer of almost like a transitional object, what we might call a transitional object. So a transitional relational aspect to it. And so I actually build it into our work together where they get massages as part of their experience. So just an offer of that. And I do also believe that pets can offer some level of substitution. But I was interested in hearing from you, Captain, what you might recommend in terms of protective factors, because a lot of our work so often is, tertiary after the fact. And Russ mentioned the TAPS program, right? And it's interesting because I'm working with another one of our DSWs. I'm the chair of her committee, where she's talking about the reconstruction of the TAPS program. And so, having worked with veterans who have been through it, I'm wondering how can we, or how can, with your work and your research, which I think is so wonderful, what are some thoughts you have in terms of building a protective aspect in building your research, or what what your work has shown to be successful in the military, in terms of the pre and then through the TAPS program, so that we can provide support and intervention and guidance prior to the separation from the military. And I think that that's really important, because he mentioned one thing that was very critical, and that is that the brain is so dysregulated at that point that whatever they're being taught is not sinking in. And so therefore they're literally coming out of the TAPS program with very little guidance, very little tools and techniques and strategies to cope with the separation from the military. So I'm wondering if you had some thoughts about that.
So that's a wonderful question, and I'm gonna try to answer that as best as I can, because the TAPS program definitely could use some work. It's a great program, but it could use some work. It doesn't really address the social emotional component, and that's something that I'm also looking into. But specifically to what you're saying about, the brain is just not in the same space. TAPS program is not really trauma-informed care, unfortunately, and that could be revisited in that way. Not every veteran is the same. I mean, we have combat veterans, we have non-combat veterans, and those two populations are going to have very different needs. And the TAPS doesn't really discriminate for that. It's all one and done. So when I looked at what can be done to promote the veteran, the military to civilian transition, a lot of what I found was the psychoeducation component, essentially offering that information prior to having these traumatic experiences. A lot of this, in order for it to really change, unfortunately, I mean, it takes money. It takes a lot of money, a lot of funding, a lot of training, and I can offer like, oh, these are some things that could be helpful, but it's the implementation of those things that, you have to go to the Department of Defense. They're the ones in charge of the TAPS program. So I hope to one day go and advocate for that change in front of them. But unfortunately, it is not designed to really help facilitate, those components of the reintegration when a veteran has PTSD. And a lot of the times they're given the diagnoses of PTSD without really explaining what is PTSD. And it takes years before they even realize, like, oh, this is what it was. And that creates a secondary level of issue, because they're then creating these negative beliefs about themselves, like, oh, well, there's something wrong with me, or I'm alone, or, and it just promotes more disencouragement. So the intervention I'm proposing through this bigger training is a specific Polyvagal Theory group intervention process that's going to incorporate a lot of components to help them reintegrate into their community. But a lot of it starts with psychoeducation and then trauma-informed care if we can.
So thank you. I'm excited about that. And my last comment is twofold. One is, I think as an administrator, my challenge to you is demonstrating for them the return on investment in terms of doing prevention as opposed to postvention can be a serious savings to them, because obviously everything usually does come down to the bottom line for most businesses, and the military is a business.
Yeah.
just like anything else. So I would I hope you don't lose the energy that you have and your passion, because I think you can definitely demonstrate what prevention can offer and save money in terms of creating constant programming and so forth in terms of postvention, and trying to create programs after the separation, after the injury has been done, after the escalation has occurred, and how much more money can be spent on that. So that might be a way for you to encourage the military
Yes.
to hear your proposal to
Proposal.
that. And my last comment is just to express to you and Sahoni and everyone here how utterly impressed I am with all of you, and so feeling so blessed right now to have you all in our DSW program. I'm sorry I haven't always been able to attend the workshops, but I am just awed. And by the way, while you were speaking, I did buy 2 of your books. I
Yay.
did on Amazon.
Thank
I
you.
went ahead because I wanted to read them. I bought one. I bought the guilt one, and then I bought the one you wrote for children, the elephant, the angry
Yes.
elephant. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
anxious. I'll get them tomorrow, I believe.
Oh,
So
thank you.
after I read them, I would love to let you know how I experienced that, because I'd love to share those also with my grandbabies who are 3 and 2 now, and
Oh,
all those things I think might be helpful to them too. So thank you so much. Really, really loved your presentation. And again, please express to Russ how awed and just really my gratitude for him sharing his such real story and his vulnerability and strength and courage with us. And congratulations on your work with him.
thank you.
It was
Appreciate it.
beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Lindsay?
Yeah, hi. I'm part of the master's program, so this was absolutely phenomenal. I'm actually a veteran spouse as well. He retired almost 2 years ago, so combat veteran. I'm sure you can imagine
Mm.
it's been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And everything you presented on was just right along. Like, you really hit it on the head. You know what I mean? And so I really appreciate the work that you're doing, because it's been really challenging for him to navigate the VA, us together. And I really enjoyed how you talked about the numerical scale of where they were at in their hypervigilance, because that's something that my husband and I do. I ask him where he's at on a level of 1 to 10,
Nice.
and he's consistently on, I would say, a 7. I never expected to be below a 7. If I do get it, I'm very proud of him and happy for him. But it's usually sitting around an 8 or a 9 continuously. So I thought that was very beautiful that somehow you've managed to do that with your clients and patients. And I also really enjoyed how you talked about the visualization of hypervigilance, because we know from trauma that when a trigger happens, and it's something that happens with my husband, is that he kind of goes blank, and all of these images are coming up in his head, and I know when it's happening. Like, I know immediately when he's going into a trigger and he's going into all of these maybe war zone or combat zone imagery. So I was wondering if maybe you could give me some advice on how to help him out. Something that I have recognized is sometimes I have to be careful, because touch can enact a response. So I do have to be mindful, like if he's sleeping, I don't touch anywhere near his top body. I'll touch his feet or something, but while he's awake, let's say, and he's disassociating, and I can see that he's going into a visual trigger and a panic, is there any suggestions that you have that would help him calm down if physical touch isn't the best idea? Because that's something as a spouse that I've been really struggling with, compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
And how to just navigate
through those triggers, like, because I know he's there, but visually he's, his eyesight, he's looking at you, but it's not you. Because, we understand trauma, that area of the brain takes over and the imagery kind of immobilizes you. So is there any type of advice you could give?
Yes. So one of the challenges when it comes down to, because what you're describing is like this automatic nervous system of fight or flight or freeze.
Yeah.
And, I can offer him all kinds of tools to do like when that happens. The problem is that when you go into that space, it defaults to the pre-established automatic responses. So it's really difficult to integrate a new skill in the moment. So what I recommend is to do these breathing exercises of that 1 minute, and then you can add more together prior to the potential episode. So you want to build that vagal tone. That's the vagal dominance we're talking about, is to promote the parasympathetic. So the parasympathetic nervous system, think about it as a muscle. And if we're, and the sympathetic as well. So if we're only exercising one arm, the sympathetic, then the parasympathetic is going to be weak to regulate the sympathetic nervous system. So we really want to practice building those techniques before that in a regulated space. And it's a difficult thing because it takes time to really develop that strength. I think one of the things that, and it sounds like you're already doing this, but just you staying regulated in the moment can be very powerful. It seems like you're also aware of what may make the situation worse, right? So that can help
Through
as well.
experience.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate as well. I mean, there's a lot of support that is also needed for y'all as well.
Yeah. Well, I did Veterans Support Network out of Texas. That kind of gave me a lot of grounding to recognize when I would try to tell them to calm down. Like, because, when you go for clinical work, you know what you're doing, but when it's actually happening in your home, it's hard to apply it. So,
yeah. And here's another challenge. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to validate and acknowledge for you that, I can appreciate how top of mind this is in for you and to help. However, it is also important for him to do his own work. Otherwise, you're going to burn yourself out. And I just want to empathize, because as much as I can see how much you want to help him, you can do all the things, but if he's not doing the effort or the work, and I don't know, maybe he is, I don't know, right? But
no,
that is a big factor, in all
I'm
of
burned
that.
out.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. He's really struggling with his purpose in life. He did a Special Forces Army Green Beret for 14 years, and he retired. It was very intense. Night terrors every night, sleep apnea, and he has therapy, so he's connecting with his therapist now. But you hit it on the head, and I admire the work you do, because it's challenging, but I think he's still struggling with that idea of purpose, and that's really where we're working to find options for support. And I've talked to him about massage therapy, because he's never had a massage. So I love that Tihan brought that up. But I don't know. I really do appreciate the work you're doing. And if you ever want to go to Congress or Washington, let me know. I will come with you, and I will be a loud advocate with you.
Yes.
So
yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, and if you could just drop the name of your book, because I totally missed that, I would love to read it.
Yeah. And you can also find that information in my website, which is my name, Garcia-Cuellar.com. Put in the chat. Now, I think the session might, I don't know if it shuts off automatically. Saoni, do you know? It does, right? It doesn't? It can keep going?
Yeah, this isn't Zoom. I love Teams.
Oh, right. Okay.
It stays. But
Okay, so we're good.
I believe you have class, no?
Yeah, I'm fine. She knows.
All right.
So
I just
I'll
want to
just go
respect your
ahead.
time.
You're good. Yes, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Also put the book in the chat.
Oh, thanks.
Michelle. Michelle's also honor association.
Hey, hi there.
Hi.
I'll be honest with you, I only heard really half of what you were talking about because I had a client right in the middle of it. So I'm like, I hurried
It's okay.
back to get so I can listen to the rest of it, but I will be listening to the entire recorded one. Um, I want to say I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Personally, I see maybe 70% veterans in my private practice.
Oh.
And yeah, that's one of the big struggles that I go through also is, like I walk them through my entire building. Like you can see part of my office, I'm still at work right now, behind me, and we walk them through the entire office. Most of them will already tell me, oh, I've already looked at the schematics of the building before I got here. I'm like, okay, that gives me an idea of the level of your hypervigilance right there. But, and sometimes it is difficult to kind of navigate through that. But I love the ideas that you've had, and I definitely plan on um, probably reaching out to you at
Please
some
do.
point as well. And I did let my business partner, who's Trista Moffat, and she's also in the program here with me in second year. We graduate in 26. And I believe she's probably going to get in touch with you regarding your non-for-profit because that's exactly what she wants to do her capstone on. So this will be
Nice.
fun.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
thank you. And then I will be launching a full webinar on an extended, again, this is just one part of this paper that I'm publishing, but the work is so much more, and I'm excited for that. And so yeah, please stay in touch. And if there's anything training wise that I can offer, I'm happy to do it.
I appreciate it. Keep going. That's all I can
Thank you.
say. I love it.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions, comments?
All right.
Going once, going twice. Jose, thank you again. Captain, I'm sorry. I know we're
It's
at
okay.
first name basis. We are, but everybody else is not.
Thank you. Thanks for the
Thank
opportunity
you so
for hearing me out.
much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, it was amazing.
All right. Well, have a good one.
Bye.